Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Allbrands Show. I am Barbara Chatelaine from allbrands.com. And how are you doing today? I am so excited that you're here with us. Let's just take a moment to say hey to a few folks that are watching. Hi, Hinkle from Michigan. Nice to see you. Michelle from Zachary, Louisiana. Good to see you again, too. And guess what? Look. Jay Anderson says, wow, thank you, John Douthit. Yes, our owner and tech, John Douthit, is in the comments section, and he'll be moderating that. We also have tons of staff available as well. So I hope that you just learn a lot in this video that we've set up with our San Antonio technician, Stephen Thompson. He is phenomenal. And also, not only, hopefully you'll pick up some tips and tricks and ways to keep your machine up and running in great condition. We have two really big giveaways for this video. So during this video, I will be giving away a $100 allbrands.com e-gift card that you can use towards servicing your machine in our store, or purchasing on our website, or if you just want to buy fabric in our store, you can do that too. So yeah, so stay tuned for that. But to be eligible, you have to like, comment, and share this post to be eligible for that. So, and then I'll announce at the end how you could be eligible to win another $100 allbrands.com e-gift card. So yeah, I'm so excited. So I'm going to bring in Stephen Thompson, and here he is. Hey, Stephen, welcome.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing?
Awesome. I have a lot to learn, and I feel so excited that you're here with us today.
Well, I hope everybody takes something useful away from this. We'll try to cover as much as we can. If you have questions, please ask. If it's not addressed, we'll make sure it gets answered.
Yes, yes. And I will try to keep up with the comments in the chat here. And guess what? If we don't get to you and you have a machine-specific question, I just want to say in the very beginning that you can email us at help@allbrands.com. And we are always available for support for you there. So yeah. So Stephen, I think there's a lot of things that can happen with a sewing machine making a stitch. So how do we, I'll just let you take it away because I don't even know what to ask.
A lot of it, I would say, start at basics. Setup and maintenance can go a long ways. I think there's a lot as users that we can do to prevent frustrating issues or potential trips in for service. Simple things from threading to needle changes, cleaning can be super important. These modern machines have a lot of capabilities and sensors that one little piece of lint can cause, the machine not to function the way we hope it to. So a lot of easy things that everybody can take care of will go a long ways. Threading, I think, is something super important. I think as we all thread a machine over and over, especially with embroidery, multiple color changes, it's easy to get complacent, overconfident. We want the project to be done, and we rush through that.
You mean like when I'm threading my machine at 2 a.m. and drinking my coffee and then threading it with one hand like this?
Exactly.
And then something happens and then I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I have to rethread it, and then it usually fixes the problem.
We all do over and over, but there's several very important steps that if something does go wrong, I'm sure we've all experienced it, and it can, lead to several issues. So we'll go over that, and we'll do a machine view. I'll show you some of my opinions on tricks for threading. I think unthreading can be just as important, if not more important, than threading itself, especially for the longevity of the machine before having to have service.
Yeah.
Cleaning is super important. There's not as much as we can do on some of our newer machines, except for cleaning the hook and pin case area, which is very important. So we'll look at a couple of platforms, try to show you some, little tricks or hints there, some things to look out for, and maybe help, build some confidence to where everybody can, dig in and start taking care of their own machines. Oiling.
Great.
That's going to be a little more machine specific. A lot of.
I know that, Stephen, because it's so funny. Like in the instruction manuals for some machines, you look it up and they say you need to oil it at this amount of time in this specific spot here and here. But then some machines say, this machine does not require any oiling. Don't oil this machine. So that is machine specific. I know that.
Yes, all machines will require oiling. They're not all consumer set up to oil, if that makes sense. Some of them do require a service to have the machine, thoroughly disassembled to oil properly. Some of them you can take care of on your own. So we'll kind of briefly go over the differences on that and what you can take care of on your own and what is kind of mixed into your annual or biannual maintenance, depending on use. If we go back to the beginning for threading, thread quality, whether we're sewing or embroidery, there is quite a bit of difference between thread manufacturers and quality. Some awesome and some not as awesome. So better judgment on quality of thread, especially on more modern, higher speed machines. Personal favorites, there's a lot to choose from. For sewing, I'm an Aurifil fan. Good
Me
quality.
too, Stephen. I love their cotton. It doesn't fray.
I've had no thread breaks. That's all that's used at the house. And I've used quite a bit of it here at the store. I've never had a thread break with this brand. For embroidery, I've used a few. I always go back to Isacord. Isacord may not be as shiny as some threads, but the strength outweighs that, in my opinion. I rarely see fraying, thread breaks, anything like that. Lots of other brands out there. Not saying you have to stick with these two. Those are just two that I personally feel confident with.
Yeah. Can I tell you my favorite, Stephen?
Absolutely.
And I know not all threads are created equal for certain machines, but I've been really liking the Glide thread by Filtech for embroidery on the multi-needle, and Robeson Anton and Brother makes great embroidery thread. Oh my gosh, there's so many different ones, and I love. What do you think of the metallic Kingstar?
It's the only one I have to use. I've tried a couple other brands, and I'll go back to the Kingstar. I've had great luck with it, even running the machines at above normal recommended speeds. I've pushed that thread pretty hard on the new luminaires with very little threads.
Yeah, I've noticed too, like certain threads you can see, like when you're sewing and then you open up your needle plate to clean the bobbin area, you'll notice that some of them get way more linty than others and junk up your machine there.
Absolutely. And we'll go over that. That lint causes a lot more potential issues than we would think. If want, I'll go ahead and move cameras over to a flatbed machine, and we'll go over threading and then work our way down to bobbin case, and we can kind of touch on and address cleaning, what to look for on cleaning, because so many of our sewing threads do create a lot of lint that can be troublesome.
Great. And I'll just come in while you change that. And oh my gosh, guys, if we don't get to your questions right this second, we do have some folks in the comments, and we'll try to moderate those afterwards. So here you go, Stephen. Here you go.
Okay. I'm going to start with basic threading. I think unthreading could be more beneficial to most of us. But to start off, I'm a big fan of thread stands personally. A lot of the new models have that as a either an option or something included. So if you do have that option and haven't been trying it yet, I would recommend giving that a try and see what you think. All machines, we want to make sure presser foot is up. A lot of our modern machines will kind of prevent us from threading properly if the presser foot's down. And depending on your machine, let's make sure that the needle is in the up position too. New computerized machine, that makes it easy. If you're running an older machine, just hand wheel and make sure your needle's in the upper position. Threading is pretty straightforward. Some prefer to hold extra tension on the backside. I don't. It's definitely going to be up to you. I think one item that is missed the most is the take-up lever. So when you are making the final loop around the take-up lever, giving that final visual inspection before you stitch is worth a little bit of time. If that is missed, you will immediately get some type of bird's nesting. Once we are got the rest of the threading, the other spot that I see issues with is the final little retainer clip that's right above the needle. All manufacturers have one version or another, so make sure we're clipped in there. It will unthread itself a lot easier if that's not secure. The rest of the threading, at least on a modern Brother machine, is super simple. At this point, we get to unthreading for color changes or something like that with embroidery. We all remove thread from of the machine. I don't want to pull the thread back up into the machine. If I have fraying, lint, anything like that that accumulates around the needle, I don't want to bring that back up into the machine. That's going to typically just add more debris into your upper tension assembly. We do also have a few sensors and springs down here that we can cause damage to. So I always trim at the spool and pull out through the needle to the bottom of the machine. If I have anything on the bottom of my thread, lint, anything like that, I've taken it away from the machine and not put it back into the machine. The other question I get on that same setup, which I'll rethread the machine real quick, is what happens if the machine pulls the thread back up into it? You had a thread break, something like that, and we are not able to grab the thread from down at the needle. It's not super common, but does happen. So I'll just go ahead and cut the thread up high, just to simulate that. Now I don't have thread at the bottom to grab a hold of. Just unthread the machine backwards, kind of unfloss it, if that makes sense. So you can just work back exactly the way you threaded the machine, but in reverse, and that'll allow you to get that tail without causing, any potential damage. That is probably one of the most useful threading techniques I can think of. At that point, when we're doing any maintenance or anything down here, I would make sure machine's off, needle out.
Oops, I always do that. And on some machines, it gives you a little error message that says turn off your machine before removing the needle plate.
Absolutely.
So
just to have it alive, I'm going to leave the machine on and we're going to get an error message instantly. The machines are doing what they're supposed to try to protect us. Needle plate is a single piece on some manufacturers, and on the new Luminaire line, if you have any of the older two-piece needle plate, one key piece of info I'd recommend is you're going to have 2 mounting screws to remove this for maintenance. Quick maintenance, you can just slide the plastic needle plate B assembly off, and that'll allow you to get to your bobbin case and do some basic cleaning. More depth cleaning, complete needle plate removal is nice, but if you have the 2-piece, leave that plastic needle plate attachment on while you remove the 2 screws. If you do happen to drop a screw or something while taking it apart, that'll at least protect it from getting down into the machine, which you'll probably need help rescuing. Once the needle plate's off, at this point, only this assembly side you'll want to go further with without making stuff that would need adjustments is going to be the bobbin case. All the bobbin cases should pop in and out fairly simple. So we will remove that one item, which will allow us to get into the hook and clean better. At that point, they make little micro vacuum attachments, which are very handy. I would not use canned air, air compressor, or anything like that with an enclosed machine. You're just going to push debris farther inside down here where all the bottom shaft and gears are at.
Yeah, Stephen, so let me just say a little bit about that, because I think that's so important. In the link in the description of this video, there's several links below. So Stephen was just suggesting there is a vacuum cleaner attachment set that you can connect to your vacuum cleaner and suck the lint out. You never want to use canned air because that just pushes the lint further into your machine. So please check out that in the links in the description of this video.
Absolutely. The other issue I would be cautious with any canned air, an unprotected air compressor, is going to be moisture. These are computer controlled machines. Most of them have quite a few sensors. Even if it's an older machine that is not computerized, that moisture will attract lint faster and potentially lead to corrosion issues. So simple dry forms of cleaning, makeup brushes work really great. A lot of stores will, in their notions type areas, have some type of little nylon bristle brush, which works great. Most machines in your accessory case that came with it will have some small little nylon brush. These smaller, but they work great for getting into some of the small areas, cleaning out the inside of the bobbin case, hook, stuff like that. Another cheap, great option to use with some caution is pipe cleaners. I would get at least quality ones. Try not to find the lowest cost ones you can. And remember, these are wire. So I don't want to clean with just the raw end, because that could potentially scratch, add burrs, damage wires, something like that. So we do always want to fold, make a loop. That little loop will work great to go around the hook to pull excess lint out. Little simple steps like that on a regular basis will prevent buildup. The other thing I would mention, all these top loading machines where our bobbin case comes in from the top, if we do a lot of sewing or lengthy thread, the actual bobbin case itself can get a bunch of debris built up inside of it. Where the thread goes, I'll start noticing tension changes. That area where my thread is what provides the tension. That very well could be built up with lint. They make tools for this, but everybody has computer paper at the house. I fold a piece of computer paper over and we'll slide it up in where the thread goes, and that works great for knocking the debris that might be in there out. That works just as well for if you have a front load machine like a Bernina, a PR, anything like that. Let me grab a bobbin case. The bobbin case will be different, but the technique can be the same to get in there and clean the bobbin case. Depending on the machine, I would add that as a normal part of this, along with cleaning any lint or debris out. At that point with the machine, there's not much else we can do. Find stray pieces of thread. You can remove those gently with tweezers, something like that. Just try to avoid any sharp, pointy metal objects because we might scratch or add burrs to cause more damage.
Yeah. Hey, Stephen. So whenever I take my bobbin case out, which can be very stressful for some folks, there's a little white dot that you can align for the top loading bobbins to easily set it back in your machine. But anytime I do take the bobbin case out of the machine, I check for burrs on that hook if I maybe have broken a needle, because that could snag some thread, right?
Absolutely. I would always check the perimeter of the hook and the bobbin case itself.
Can you show us where on the hook we should check?
Let me see if I can get a good view for you. So the hook itself, bobbin case is out. you can actually see the hook tip now in that view, which this is the actual tip of the hook that would stitch. So I would run my finger all the way around the perimeter. If you have any damage, it's going to be probably 180 out on this backside, or the super important spot is right there. That's where the machine is actually catching the loop of thread to create the stitch. So any sharp, if you feel anything that's not smooth, it's going to lead to quality issues of some, depending how bad, it's hard to say. Sometimes they can be polished out by a technician. Sometimes we might have to actually replace parts. Same with the bobbin case itself. We don't want any rough edges, anything along the surface of this. If there's anything along here, the part is bad and will cause looping, frayed thread, broken thread. If it's extremely bad, we could start getting needle breaks or stuff like that. So all of those components, it's a great point. If you're cleaning, give it a quick visual inspection. If you find anything, bobbin cases are an easy fix on your own. Most of the time you can find these available for order at your local dealer, to get a replacement to put in the machine. If you find anything that feels, questionable inside, that would probably be a good time to justify, a service to get everything addressed.
Yes, I agree, Stephen. And they can actually purchase those on our website, allbrands.com, and those are replaceable by the consumer. So, so it's definitely something that if you see a burr, you can replace your own bobbin case. But the metal part, if there's damage to that, you would need to bring that in for service, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that would be something that would require actual disassembly of the machine, and then everything would have to be retimed and set clearances to make sure the machine functions properly. Wonderful. There is the little white dot on the bobbin case itself. See if I can get a decent view of that. That is going to be your alignment mark to go into the machine. Most brands have that same mark. If they don't, one little trick is when the bobbin case goes into the machine, rotate it kind of counterclockwise, and there's always a little bracket in here that the bobbin case bumps up against. So if you make sure it's touching that bracket, we know that it's positioned correctly, and then we won't have any issues reinstalling needle plate.
Yeah. So Stephen, I actually have a slide that we're going to bring up for that that vacuum kit that we sell on our website, allbrands.com. It's only $19.99. So please take advantage of that. And it keeps your machine, that's a minimal investment to keep your machine in good working order. It has a 36-inch long hose and straight pipe with an angled micro crevice tool and dusting brush and oval dusting brush. And it literally sucks the lint and thread out of your sewing machine. So that's a wonderful thing to have. And do you think you could even use that on the take-up lever if you maybe have some thread in there? What's your thoughts on that?
It never hurts to try. It's a little more complex up there. So if we get something serious up there, might be time to look for some assistance on that. Yeah. On older machines, that's a pretty easy fix for the customer. On some of the new ones, we do start getting complicated setups, all these machines with cameras and, laser guideline assemblies. There's a lot more electronic components up there that we can knock out of alignment if we're not careful. So at this point, we got bobbin case and everything back in. This type of a machine, there is no user serviceable area for oil. Everything is going to stay dry on your side of the machine. We can reinstall needle plate. Well, let's pull that back off quick. We talked about checking burrs on the hook and bobbin case. If you have needle breaks, a lot of times you're going to find some damage around this opening. That's definitely something you're going to want to have addressed. If it's minimal, it might be able to be fixed. Larger, scrapes, gouges, stuff like that, possibly will need the plate itself replaced to prevent, any thread damage.
That's really helpful, Stephen. And I know that we asked a lot of questions before this live for the folks who pre-registered. And a lot of the questions were, what voids the warranty, which is a good question. So what you saw Stephen cleaning and taking out is about the extent that you would want to do on a on your own machine. Is that correct, Stephen?
Yes, that's correct. They don't recommend any disassembly. So if you got to pull out screwdrivers, anything above removing the plate, tread lightly. It's kind of up to the discretion of the tech. It's normally pretty easy to tell if stuff has been tampered with. So I would say reach out to your local tech, whoever shop you use. Look for advice or recommendations. If you're on, kind of stuck in the middle of a project and need something resolved that you might be able to do at home, at least ask for some advice and recommendations first. Most would probably be willing to kind of share some info and at least walk you through something that you can do safely without causing other damage.
Stephen, thank you so much. And I feel like because I have that same machine, that's the things that I have to do if I run into a roadblock to, get up and start it again. Another thing that you can do is just to change the needle, right? Because you could have a bend that you don't really see, or what are some noises to look out for on the machine?
Everybody's going to know their machine, right? You spend a lot of time sewing on it. So you're going to notice when something sounds a little different. Needle replacement is definitely something to, in my opinion, needles are low cost compared to the time expense you putting into a project, the cost of a machine. Good general rule is 8 hours. I, depending on what you're sewing on, would recommend more frequent than that, honestly. If you get into some of these more intricate in the hoop projects, stitching through, all types of marine vinyls or cork or, something that's a little more abrasive, replace the needle. If you have any hiccup, weird sounding noise, thread break, shredding, step 1, new needle, step 2, rethread machine. That will resolve a lot of our issues. Needle quality type is going to kind of play into that as well. They do make a bunch of different needles, which can be a little overwhelming. But sadly, there is a reason why we have so many different options. Every material acts a little different. So we want to kind of set ourselves for success by using the right equipment when possible. So change needles, reach out to your local store, send emails if you need to find out which needle would work the best for your machine and the project you're working on.
Yeah.
Sometimes a simple change will make a big difference.
So, Stephen, one thing that I do is if I think that my machine may be the cause of a problem, I always go back to square one. So if I'm sewing, I'll take cotton fabric, cotton thread on the top and bottom with a standard needle, make my straight stitch, check to make sure that that's running well. Because it may be a combination of my thread type to my needle type. So going back to square one and testing that helps me. Also, whenever I'm in embroidery, say if I download a design from online, wherever, some guy in his garage digitized the design and it doesn't stitch out correctly, I go into my machine and I pick out one of the block font designs and I set up a hoop and just test that out to make sure that it's not the design versus the machine, right?
Absolutely. I think that's a great recommendation. So many variables that can make this stuff confusing. So sometimes stepping back to basics and address one step at a time. If we do a bunch of things at once, you might fix the problem, but you're not helping yourself because you didn't learn how you fix the problem. So if you do it one step at a time, you'll learn what you did to fix the problem, which will really help in the future if you encounter the issue again.
So
Um,
speaking of embroidery, and I know we've had some questions on a few questions on Berninas, which we're definitely going to have another live. I hope that you join us again because we just can't fit all that in 1 hour. But a few folks asked about unique tension and Bernina bobbin, and the PR behind you has the dial type tension and the front load L bobbin. So maybe watching that portion will help answer your question on those, but maybe we should talk a little bit about the embroidery side.
Sounds good. Give me a second and I'll set up a camera point to the PR since it does have fully adjustable tension set up on it, and we can kind of hopefully address some of those questions that you have on that one.
Let's see. Here we go.
So tension adjustments are going to be very similar on most machines. There's normally going to be one fixed variable. If you are adjusting both upper tension and say bobbin tension without having something kind of set in stone to start with, it can get confusing really quick. Most companies will have your bob case as something to where they tell you exactly what it should be set to. They'll either come with little weights to hang off of them, depending on what the machine is. Sometimes these are preset. Most of them will give us an adjustable option. One thing you can do with a lot of manufacturers, especially with any of the front loading, say long arms, straight stitch sewing machines, any of the embroidery machines, is they do make specific gauges for them. Every manufacturer will have kind of different weight that they recommend. So a little research is kind of put in at that point. I normally recommend to use these as more of a reference guide. I feel like if you get tied up trying to hit one specific number, you'll drive yourself crazy trying to get there instead of finding something that's in the acceptable range. Once this is set,
Stephen, I have to tell you, one reason I have to have that toe attention gauge is because I got a little excited with that little screw on my front load bobbin, tightening and adjusting it, and I didn't know how to set it back, so I had to get the toe attention gauge to make sure that was set back correctly because I either over or under tightened the screw on that bobbin case.
That is a great point. They are super sensitive. I normally recommend people to picture them like a clock and do like half-hour increments because
Can you show us where that is on the bobbin case?
All bobbin cases, let's see if we can get a decent view, are going to have two screws. Looks like we can see that. One screw holds the assembly together, and you notice this one is our adjustment. It's going to be super small adjustments. It's better to make one adjustment, do a test sew, and then continue on instead of adjusting too much. Just to give you an idea, let's see if I can get that on camera decent. This is a tension gauge, and I'm pulling in what looks like 175 to 200 range. That's about 3 hours of adjustment, and I'm already pushing up close to 400. So that was a huge change with about a quarter of a turn on the screw. So they are really sensitive on the bobbin side. So small corrections in test are going to be ideal, or you'll end up chasing it because it'll be too loose and then too tight.
Yeah, and usually that never needs to be adjusted, just for reference. Very rarely that screw needs to be adjusted, correct, Stephen?
If it's adjusted, it's normally one, two things. Back to what we were talking about, cleaning it. And I would say every 5 or 6 bobbins, have a piece of paper or something handy and floss that tension tab. If you all of a sudden start getting bobbin thread pulling to the top, probably this is built up with lint and not functioning properly anymore. Only other application is extremely heavy use, and you've just the bobbin case out. It just from use has wear on it, which an adjustment might fix. But if we start getting grooves and stuff in it, it's going to be just time for replacing. One thing to remember, it's hard to believe, but thread is extremely abrasive. I think most people would be surprised at how many parts in these machines get lines physically cut into the metal part from the thread. So sometimes you're beyond the adjustment stage and we just need to replace it with a fresh part.
So those toe tension gauges that Steven showed are available on our website and are linked in the description of this video. We have the links for the Class 15, that's for the luminaire and drop-in bobbin machines. The PR uses an L-style bobbin, which is in this PR machine, and the M style is for a lot of long arm machines.
They are worth having on hand, if anything, for a consistency check. If you got a project coming up and your tension that you prefer is, say, 250, at least before you get depth in a lengthy project, being able to check it and make sure you're still in that area. We're on to this machine, kind of detours from tension real quick, but while we're at the bobbin area, this is going to be the same for any older machine. Pretty much any vertical hook type machine. They do require oiling at the beginning of every day. I normally recommend by the time you're 4 or 5 bobbins in, if you're stitching all throughout the day, another drop of oil doesn't hurt. A quality oil pin of some sort is important. They make very small pins, which I love. It's a small needle, so it makes it very difficult to over oil to where you never have concerns of oil splashing up on your project. If you use the machine a lot, another option we can get, which is what I use for work, is it's still a little bit larger of a needle. But what I like about these is they're brass, so you can kind of bend them to the shape you need to reach your machine easily. And of course, you have enough oil that fits in them to last you a really long time.
Yeah, so I included that PR oil pin in the description below, if anyone is interested in that. And that's for most all machines, correct?
Absolutely. It's just a sewing machine oil, and it's in a great little dispenser to make application easy. All of these style of machines that have this type of hook are going to oil very similar. These modern PRs have a couple of features to position this hook for us to make oiling easy. But what we're looking for is the hook is made out of 2 different components. One that's going to stay in position, and the hook itself is going to spin around. We need to lubricate between those. There is always a little rail. Let's see if I can get it in camera properly. There's always a little metal rail. Is that visible? That we're going to put a drop of oil on. Doesn't take much. Small drop at the beginning of every day, another drop every 4 or 5 bobbins. If we are working with, say, PR machine, for example, they've actually made life a little easy for us because they do have a setting inside of them now that actually does look like oil indicator, and they kind of walk us through oiling. But it is going to rotate the machine and put the hook in a position that makes applying oil easy. So the machine's going to give us a message letting us know that it moved to the hook, and all it did was rotate the hook slightly just to expose that flat bar I was telling you about. And once that, it's going to match the image that I show you on screen and the image that's down in here of what the hook looks like. It's going to tell you to come in from the right side to apply oil. If your machine doesn't have that, as long as you can access it, even if you take the handle wheel, rotate the handle wheel yourself, fine.
Is that similar to the places where you need to oil on a Bernina hook?
Yes and no. Older Berninas, yes. We get into modern Fox 7 and 8 series, and yes and no. And then they start, if we are talking Bernina, verify with your store, your tech, which model you have, because some do require special oil. So running a modern Bernina, they don't always recommend the same oil that other machines use. So older Berninas, absolutely. Newer ones, make sure to reach out to your dealer tech, give us an email, something like that. Make sure you're using the right equipment. We talked about tension. If we had the bobbin case, we used our gauge, we used the included weight, that is set. We know that is good to go. When we do a stitch out, everybody is always wanting that typical, third view on the back of the fabric. If you see a bunch of bobbin thread, we're going to most likely have too high of tension up here, because when this is set correctly, we would loosen upper, or vice versa. Where that gets confusing is if we didn't set our bobbin tension correctly first, we don't really know which one to adjust. So we always need to kind of follow manuals or recommendations on at least one of them to where we know we have something correct. This particular machine, upper tension, if you have a PR, they got graduated scale on them. Only start with somewhere between the two, right around the 2.5, somewhere between the 2 and the second and third line. If you set them there, the machine will absolutely sew, and it'll only require small adjustments to get it to where it's acting the way it should. Cleaning is going to be very similar on this machine as the other machines, with a couple of little exceptions. I think it are faster and easier to clean. We don't have sensors, wires, anything like that to worry about. We would just remove bobbin case, and needle plate. Needle plate, I think, is important because we do have a cutter that keeping this area clean is important. So at this point, we would just clean any lint, everything out from around the hook. That's when small brushes, pipe cleaner, stuff like that, to reach in and pull any of the lint and dust from around the hook and get it out of there is handy. Quick clean there, a drop of oil. That's pretty much all we need to do on these machines. Needle plate back on. Make sure you get the screws on any machine that has the needle plate attached with screws. Make sure they're more than hand tight. We don't need to torque them, but you don't want those vibrating loose while you're sewing. That will cause issues and scare us all.
This is so helpful, Stephen. So it's okay to take the needle plate off on your multi-needle embroidery machine to get the thread out?
Yeah, I mean, I would consider it mandatory. I mean, if you want to keep your machine clean, right? If it's clean, it's going to operate well. You're going to have less issues where it's damaging a product or slowing you down. So top side of the machine, keep the top clean, dust off of it as much as possible. If it's set up at home, I don't have it on this machine. Threads, I think, are a great use on these. They'll keep stuff from settling on your spools. You won't have to worry about thread hanging up. Needle, right? Needle. So proper needle and a good needle.
A lot of times, Stephen, whenever I run into a roadblock, I find out that my thread isn't necessarily on the spool pin correct for that type of spool. And maybe the thread gets caught behind the spool and snags and then creates my thread to pop. So kind of looking at where your thread is located on the machine is helpful. Do you have any tips for that?
That's why I'm a fan of thread nets. All these spools have great little handy features where there's something on the bottom that we can put the spool in the thread when we're not using it. I see we open it, we take the thread out, we never close that back down. So now I have something open. When the thread's on the spool, it's not being used, it has a tendency to kind of droop down. When it droops down, that's when it gets hung on something. As soon as we start sewing, it's caught and we end up with a needle break. Something as simple as at least your primary colors that you know are going to be there and they're going to be used all the time. Thread net is handy. If not, the for product, if the machine hasn't been used in a little while, check the thread path. Start at the spools and work your way down the machine. It's quicker to check than to find out when the machine gives you an error message and lets you know something's wrong.
Yeah. So we're going to be getting into the Q&A section pretty soon, but we did
Okay.
have some questions that I wanted to ask you, Stephen, that some of our pre-registrants asked. So
Okay.
in kind of a general form, what types of things are covered under manufacturer's warranty on new machines that are purchased?
Every manufacturer that I work with is a little different, but they're all very similar. Warranty on components normally covers flaws in manufacturing. If something was not produced right, that's causing issues. Consumer caused damage, broken needles, anything that
You know what I
expected.
like to think of it as, Stephen? Wearable items like tires on your car that have to be replaced would not be covered
Absolutely.
under warranty. So
Yeah.
if you think of it like that, like of course you have to buy new tires for your car because they wear out over time and help you to drive better.
Absolutely. A lot of the manufacturers I think go beyond and cover quite a bit and are pretty lenient for the most part. But there is, kind of the rules and the stuff set there. So if it's damaged just from use and wear, that's not a manufacturer warranty. That's just, a consumable that was worn from use, and would be part of, annual, upkeep type cost.
Yeah.
Main things that most don't cover is because kind of the same issue is threaders aren't covered by most. Bobbin cases are kind of covered, not covered, really depends on, if it's just a high stitch count machine and it's just worn out, this or that, it's a lost maintenance part. If you had something damaged, on a fairly new machine and it happened to get damaged because of another issue, I don't think any manufacturer is going to, make you deal with that cost. I think they're going to, make sure to take care of the customer and get those parts replaced.
Yeah, so we do have a lot of questions about needle threaders, which if you're using a specialty type needle, or if your needle is not in the utmost right position when you engage your needle threader, that little hook that goes through the eye of the needle could be pushed to the side, back, or get bent completely. And those are no longer covered under warranty, but I did get a note from our owner that said that if you'd like to just have that done, it's a $50 charge at the Allbrands locations. Can you elaborate on needle threaders?
Absolutely. Needle threaders are pretty resilient as long as we, do our part to take care of them. It is a super small hook going through a small needle. I think most of them recommend never using the threader on anything smaller than a 70-10 needle. I would buffer that personally and say a 75-11. If we're using anything smaller than that, and sometimes you need to, thread by hand. It's going to be a lot cheaper and easier in the long run instead of damaging a threader. At the same time, thread size. If we're using really heavy decorative thread for something and we want to use something that's 27 weight or something large, that's definitely going to compromise the threader as well, depending on the size of the needle, right? If you're trying to small eye, small needle, large thread, we're going to have an issue. If it's just a needle in general, then the eye of the needle is smaller than the hook is. That's going to cause issues. So if you stick with what most of us always use during embroidery, try to stay, try not to use threaders below a size 11. If you're doing general sewing or something like that, as long as you're not using very heavy decorative thread, most of the time we're going to be running 12, 14, 16 size needles. You're not going to be out of the limit either.
That's such a good suggestion. Thank you. Okay, so I'll pick a few questions, so y'all keep them coming. Cynthia, thank you so much for joining us again today. It's good to see your face. And she asks, what is the difference in the purple and green dots on the bobbin cases? That's a good question.
So depending on your machine, purple and green dot's going to be a brother sewing and embroidery combo. Green dot gets its name because Don't know if you can see on the adjustment screw, there's like a green adhesive, like a little dot of nail polish. This is, in a perfect world, our sewing bobbin case. You're not going to have any issues running your standard, 50 weight sewing thread top and bottom. Once we get into a combo machine for embroidery, they do include a purple dot, which normally has like a little ink stamp on the inside of it. You'll notice that one does not have anything blocking the screw. So this is a fully adjustable bobbin case. So depending on what brand or weight bobbin thread you prefer, this will allow you to do a test sew and make adjustments for that thread. Lots of variables. Are you doing recipe towels and want to do 90 weight bobbin thread? Are you doing freestanding lace and want to run the same 40 weight that you have on the top? That would all require some adjustments here to make the pitch as perfect as possible.
Yeah. Okay, let me see if there's any more questions. Oh, we're not getting very many. It's you must have explained everything, Stephen. So I'll go to our pre-registrants questions here.
Okay.
Let's see. Does commercial use void the warranty on brother machines? I got an answer from our owner on that. If you'd like me to answer that one.
Either way, from what I understand, is they've kind of lifted that description, and the manufacturers, I think, is being a lot more lenient, still providing the customer service on a machine that is actually being used, commercially in a lot heavier use than normal.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people that use the PR machines, like the one behind you and the one here, are professionals that are, delving into selling their creations for profit as a side business. So those machines are still covered under warranty. They did lift the commercial terminology out of that recently. So that's very good news.
Absolutely.
So how often, one question that we had is, how often do you need to bring your machines in for service?
Probably the biggest question I get, and I think it's hard to answer it with an exact number without just saying, it needs to be serviced. Every user is a little different. What brand thread are we using? Are you sewing or embroidery? I'm sure you've all experienced some projects, can create a big mess. Some projects are super clean. If you're the type that does a lot of embroidery with glitter material, this or that, you probably going to have a dirty machine quicker than somebody who does traditional quilting. You're
going to hate me.
It's really hard to say because on a lot of these modern top-loading machines like the Luminaire we were looking at don't have really much user serviceable areas for grease or oil or anything like that. I would say is at least a good preventative protection of that investment. I would probably say annually, and I would recommend don't push it past 2 years. Regardless, say reach out to your local store, your local tech. They'll probably be able to really help determine, whether you have small use or are a heavier use customer, and kind of help determine when you might want to do that preventative maintenance.
Yeah. Okay. So another question that we had, and it got buried a little bit, but it was, what if you can't get your needle plate off because the screws are too tight or possibly stripped?
On most manufacturers, I would say stripped probably is not going to happen. Right tool for the job goes a long ways. For simple out of pocket around your machine, some include it, some don't. Worth buying if you don't have one in your collection. Super handy little tool. Works great for needle. You can get down to needle plate, and probably my favorite is embroidery hoop. If you have something extra stubborn, these can be found at just any tool store, any Lowe's, Home Depot, Sears, anything that's around. It's a little 1/4-inch rack. I will say if you have to go this far, use caution because you can provide a lot of power. But with a little offset, they're short, so it's easy to get in the needle plate, to take those off. I would use this with caution as a last resort, because you can get a lot of strength out of it. You don't need to tighten stuff that tight.
Yeah. So Jill is so funny. She always makes me laugh, and it's so true, because sometimes when I'm working an event or a show and I don't have a screwdriver in my pocket, you could totally use a penny. I mean, to get a needle plate off, if you don't have one of the ones that has the quick release on it already. So yes, thank you, Jill. Let's see. How often do you change the needles in a PR machine?
PRs get funny, right? Because you're going to find yourself, you probably got, say, needle 1 through 3, the primary colors that you use all the time. And you might have a couple of, 8, 9, and 10, or 5 and 6 that rarely get used. I think it's easier to just say replace all of them. If you buy them in bulk, needles are fairly inexpensive. If you buy the 100 packs of the Oregon, EB needles for the machines, it doesn't cost a whole lot. There's plenty of them in there. If you're using it for more than a hobby and you're running the machine daily, I would probably replace them weekly, personally.
Yeah. So the Oregon needles that you have up are the HAX1 EBBR, which that is a 7511 is always what's recommended for embroidery. And the EBBR needles can actually be used in the single needle flatbed machines, like the Luminaire and the Dream Machine and all of that. It's just kind of overkill, it's too good of a needle. So that's why they're like, okay, so use HAX1ST in the Luminaire Dream Machine, but don't use that in the multi-needle. Well, that's because the multi-needle runs like professionally fast, super duper speeds. There's a lot going on in that. So it's a more souped up needle, I guess, is stronger. So I actually use the EBBR needles in my Luminaire.
Yeah, I use that needle on all, even flatbed machines, if they're a combo or embroidery machine for service and sew out. If I'm just sewing, I have a tendency to prefer a top stitch needle.
Yeah.
That's what I use most of the time. I think they give you a little bit cleaner quality when it's done. And at that point, if it's thicker materials, I'll normally make sure to run at least a 12, possibly a 14, and then I normally spend the extra money for a chrome, titanium, something like that, to just make sure it lasts.
All right, so we got to wrap it up, but I wanted to ask you a big question. So when you take your machine to Allbrands in Louisiana or Texas for service, what do you do to that machine to make sure that it's up and running? So I have a slide up here that we can go over, but if you want to just kind of talk about that just a little bit, this is our different, I guess, checklist of everything that we go over for service.
There's quite a bit entailed with it, and it honestly takes the machines apart more than most people would probably be comfortable seeing their machines taken apart. I mean, for a thorough service, it's more than just covers, hooks, sometimes full upper tension assemblies have to come out. It really depends on the machine, but even if it's a simple maintenance and the machine is in great condition, it's going to be at least all covers removed, rotary hooks, all that stuff pulled out of the machines, just to thoroughly get in there to clean, get everything repacked with grease, make sure all the bearings and bushings are oiled properly. There's a big old giant list of checkpoints between needle bar heights and clearance, and of course everybody knows hook timing, but there's a lot of different little avenues to check before anything can be reassembled. Obviously at that point everything is thoroughly overlooked. That's when you get to determine if we have damaged parts. I talked about thread cutting into thread guides, needle bars, stuff like that. Sometimes it burrs on hooks. Obviously the machine's apart, so that's a great time to put new pieces in if needed. Once they're reassembled, depending on the machine, that's just when half the work starts. If we're talking machines like we were looking at earlier, once they're assembled, then there's still a whole giant checklist of calibration steps and stuff like that to make sure everything is set up properly to where the computerized tension or presser foot heights, all that type of stuff functions the way it's supposed to. Can you hear me, Barbara?
Sorry. So there is
Yeah.
a link in the description of this video for the Allbrands service so that you can check the pricing and get more information. But again, if you have any questions, please contact us at help@allbrands.com for specific machine questions, and we'll be happy to help you there. So Stephen, I promised that we would pick a winner at the end of this video for an allbrands.com gift card that they can either use towards service in our store, or if they're not a local customer, can't make the drive to come see you in San Antonio, Texas, they can use it on our website, allbrands.com. So everybody, give us some fun emojis in the comments.
Here's the
Make
winner.
sure that you like, comment, and share this video, and I'll be picking a winner for that. And Stephen, I'm so excited because our Facebook page has just boomed lately since we started doing these virtual videos and getting everybody together. And we are, we've surpassed 14,000 follows on our page, but likes, we're about 13,928. So I wanted to announce in each video up to this, we're so excited about 14,000 likes on our Facebook page. So if you haven't liked us yet, go ahead and hop on over to our Facebook page. Our tag is at Allbrands1976. Give us a like there, because our 14,000th like will we'll get a big prize, and we'll announce that. So good luck there. So yeah. So let's see. Look at this. How cute, Karen. And Stephen, this is so helpful. And thank you so much for coming on our video. We love it. We love it. We love it. Okay, so I am going to pick a random winner. So let me go through the comments here. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to pick a random one. Okay, Beverly, congratulations. Email events@allbrands.com, your name, email address, and phone number, and I will get that $100 allbrands.com e-gift card emailed to you. Now, that's not the last giveaway that we're going to do. So everybody is still eligible to win another $100 Allbrands gift card. What you do is you like, comment, and share this video if you're on Facebook, or if you're on YouTube, like, comment, and click the bell here to subscribe to be notified of more videos. And I will pick a winner on Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. and post that to Facebook and YouTube. So good luck there. So I want to say thank you. Thank you, Stephen. And why don't we answer Beverly's question, since it's on the screen? Just where to put oil. Oh, okay. It wasn't a question because you already showed that. Got it. Well, thank you so much, Stephen. And I want to thank my father, the owner of allbrands.com. We're family owned and operated business, for assisting us in the comments, as well as Callie and Jordan and David behind the scenes also answering questions. So we love y'all so much. Oh my gosh, that's so great.
And like was mentioned, when y'all have more questions, please send us an email so to get it answered for you.
Yeah. So do you want to share your email, Stephen?
Sure. Absolutely. Be Stephen, STEPHN .Thompson, THOMPSON @allbrands.com.
Wonderful. And you are just amazing, and we really appreciate it, and we really hope that you guys send your machines in for service to Stephen Thompson, because he is a phenomenal technician. He does a great job. So
I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to tune out, and we'll see you all again on Thursday at 3:30. We'll be doing a live with Kathy Stipe on quilting with the NS80 machine. And Stephen, will you come back on the show with us sometime?
I think we can make something happen. Yeah. I appreciate everybody stopping by.
Yes. Thank y'all so much, and have a fantastic day.
Bye.
Mwah.